could hire Polly because
we could come down when we're allowed to. We'll come down for a road trip, and she can take some pictures of you. I think it did help that she was. There were no expectations on either side, and she was brilliant, and there was also absolutely no warning. And Polly had about 5 minutes to get in the car and come down. So we need to get her to do it again, and then we'll. Yeah, I think. Again, it's a bit of a confidence thing, actually. Given what we're talking about tonight, is that she's actually really, really good. But despite the fact that she's done those photos and everyone said how great they are, she still hasn't got the confidence quite yet to do anything with that. But I'm sure that will come.
Well, you can tell her from me that I think she's got a real natural eye and a natural flair for it.
Well, the other thing that added to how hard it was is that we had to be a metre apart.
Yeah, no, it was lockdown photos.
Yeah, they were proper lockdown photos. They were ace. I've never had it. Well, the only nice picture.
Yeah, I'm listening to it.
Not many.
So you're not on the
No, because I don't want them to see me in my pajamas.
They can't use that as my LinkedIn profile picture.
Caroline had photos done recently, didn't you? And I was bugging you saying, send them to me, let me see. And you're like, no.
Well, it's only because I haven't got around to downloading them yet, because I'm such a techno failure. I don't know how to download them in one fell swoop. And actually, the photographer's sister is on this. So Hattie, I have got to email Charlotte and tell her why she's not seeing any of her beautiful photos on social media. So yeah, that's why, because I basically can't download them all at once. Okay, well, that's probably a good juncture for us to get started. I'm going to put everybody on mute for now. And then we don't hear people saying things like, I don't want them to see me in my pajamas, which I just overheard. So thank you very much for coming and signing up to the first We Are Girls in Sport Wellness Month event. My son said to me earlier, is this the most important night for We Are Girls in Sport? And I said, do you know what? I think it is. It's our first proper big event. So thank you very much for signing up, especially in these very difficult times. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what we do and why we do it before I introduce our speakers tonight. So We Are Girls in Sport was started by me and Jo Wimble-Groves, who you might be able to see on your screen. And we really want to ask girls, or to encourage girls, to reevaluate their experiences and their perception of sport and exercise. So often we know that girls, including us as women and mums, associate sport with PE lessons at school. And we haven't always had the best experiences. We haven't always come away thinking, yeah, that's a sport I want to continue. And what we want to say to girls is, don't tar every sport with the same brush. There are literally thousands of sports out there. So we are trying to show girls as many of those sports as possible, and to say to them, just give it a go. And I suppose that's why tonight's webinar is so interesting. It's because you sometimes need the confidence to just dip your toe in or turn up and start running around the track. So that's one of the main things that we want to do. The second one is to encourage girls to continue sport through their teenage years. I'm sure you all know that there is a huge drop-off rate for girls when they hit puberty, and that's for a whole host of reasons, which we're not necessarily going to go into tonight. Confidence might be one of them, but there are many, many more. And what we want to say to them is, keep on going. The way that we do that is we try and show them girls and young women that have already done that, or that are doing it at the moment, and we get them to tell us, A, how they continue turning up every day or turning up for their sport, and B, how it makes them feel. That's one of the big things that we talk about. We are not necessarily concerned about size or whether you're skinny or, even how fit you are. It's more about the way sport makes you feel. So a lot of our blogs, well, certainly all of our blogs, we're asking that question of the sportswomen that we interview, be them recreational or Olympians. How does sport make you feel? And we want to try and get girls to think about not how awkward they feel, but the end how they're going to feel at the end of that open water swim, time at the skate park, or even just a brisk walk around the block. So that's kind of our mission in life. Oh, well, also to improve coverage, and we do that via our blogs, which I kind of mentioned as I went along. So please do check out our website, have a look at our blogs. If you think you've got a good story to share with us, please share away. We would love to feature as many sports as possible. In fact, we're aiming to cover 100 sports on our blog. So we've got a little way to go, but we're doing okay. So we have got some great speakers tonight. We've got Jo Wimble-Groves, who's my partner in crime for We Are Girls in Sport. And then we've got Jo and Polly from the How People. So let me introduce them, and then we'll dive straight into the presentation. So Jo Wimble-Groves, first of all, is a multi-award-winning tech entrepreneur and co-owner of Active Digital, which she has run with her brother for over 2 decades. She set it up when she was 16 with him. She's a STEM ambassador, and she's a regular keynote speaker on that subject and on building up girls and raising their confidence. You might know her from her blog, which is called Guilty Mother. It's a parenting and lifestyle blog and is followed by around about 50,000 people, which is pretty impressive. She's a keen writer, and excitingly, she's got a book coming out in 2021, so later this year, all about raising confident girls. But I'm sure she'll talk about that a little bit more later on. So Polly and Jo, if you joined early, you would have heard the banter between the two of them and between us. They are really, really fun people and passionate about raising the next generation of confident, awesome women. They describe creating a business together as the most incredible journey, and creating something that helps to inspire, support, and connect the next generation of females is the best thing that they do. They just hope that if just one girl comes away from one of their courses, then feeling inspired, then they've succeeded. They have a membership, the How People membership, which is flourishing and hosts a number of events. So this year, or in 2020, sorry, they had Period Week, they had Women in the Natural World, and guest speakers from South Asian Heritage Month. They've also worked with NatWest Bank on a course for entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs. So at the end of January, the How membership is going to be opening, and I'm sure they'll talk about that again. It's for 11 to 16-year-olds, but I would say just follow them on social media and get involved with their website if your daughter isn't old enough yet to fit that bracket, because there's so many good resources on there, and their passion for what they do just comes out of the website. It's just a pleasure to look at and read about what they've been doing. So that's the How People. Before we get started, I'm just going to say, can we keep questions to the end? If you want to send me an anonymous question, that's totally fine. If you just let me know in the chat, and then I can check my email. I probably will be checking throughout anyway. But otherwise, if you just keep your questions to the end, that would be really helpful. Okay, so Jo Wimble-Groves, can you unmute yourself? You have, excellent. Okay, so let's launch into building confidence in our girls. So Jo, girls have the same ability to feel confident as boys. Why do you think it's different for girls or harder for girls?
Well, you're absolutely right. On many levels, girls do perform, even academically, very similar results to boys. And we're giving girls more access to sports that boys have been doing traditionally. So yeah, what is the difference? I don't know if there is one particular thing of why. However, my personal opinion is boys tend to be natural risk takers, and I don't know if girls in their persona, we tend to overthink things a little bit more, and we don't always dip our toe in the water, potentially as much as men and maybe boys do. And if we're not dipping our toe in the water and coming out of our comfort zones from a young age, which is quite an important part, what we're seeing sometimes is by the time women are reaching careers and going into workplaces, we're not always finding that extra bit of confidence that we need to put our hand up and maybe take a promotion or take an opportunity. And we just sometimes have to silence that inner critic. And I'm not saying that boys don't have it, but we do tend to overthink, you know, what if I fail? What if it doesn't work out? And I think that's really holding back the ambition of girls of today. We also know from all of the research and studies that are out there at the moment that there is a crisis amongst our teenage girls when it comes to anxiety and their mental health. Again, I'm not saying that it's not affecting boys. I have 2 sons of my own, but what we're seeing in the news is that it's really affecting girls. And I, alongside you and alongside the How people, want to do something about it. And you know, sometimes this perfection of the perfect girl, and girls like to stay within the lines and they feel they always need to be a good girl and do the right thing and be quiet, and we get praise for being quiet. But in 2021, now is the time for our girls' voices to be heard. And I really mean that. We've got women out there who are making history. And I get goosebumps when I say that, because we've done a lot of progress over the last 100 years, but there's a lot more progress we need to make.
So when you go into schools and you talk at schools, do you find that you talk to the girls, do you hear them sort of behaving the way that you've just described, in that they are very compliant, say what they're supposed to say, you know, very good?
What I do find, so I went in and spoke to around 150 year 12 students. I think that's a really, really important age. I asked them to do something really, really simple. I asked them to write down on a piece of paper 3 things that they felt they were good at, or 3 things that they felt were their core strength. And I was, you know, they could write down anything really. And at best, a lot of the girls wrote 2 things, but they really struggled to answer something so simple. And this is a grammar school. These are all smart kids. But when I asked them to reflect and think about things that they were good at, they struggled. Now, there were some boys there as well, which I also had to help with. And I said to them, even a core strength could be that you're actually a really good friend. And what was really interesting is then when I reversed the question and said, okay, guys, you're struggling to write down 3 things about yourself. What I would now like you to do is write down 3 things about your friend, or somebody that sits next to you, or somebody that you know that's on this table. Absolutely no problem. Very, very simple for them to write down 3 things about their friend or someone that's sitting next to them, saying, oh, they're so good at science, or they're really good at mathematics, or they're really good at running, or actually he's brilliant with a Rubik's cube, but nobody knows that. It could have been anything, but they were just really found it hard to just reflect on what they were good at and what their core strengths are. And actually, if we can try and help our girls to find that, we can do a lot of really good work very, very easily.
And do you think there's an element there, though, as well, of girls not having the confidence to just speak up about what they're good at, almost that awful thing of, I don't feel comfortable blowing my own trumpet?
Yeah, I do, because I think there is a line, isn't there? There's a fine line between, you know, being confident and then feeling like you're being arrogant. But actually, I think we need to find the strength of our girls and allow them to, you know, to be confident in allowing themselves to express the things that they're good at. Until our girls feel like they can do that, I think there's always going to be this restriction. And I don't know if some of this comes from the inner critic, where they feel like they are good at it, but then there's that little nagging voice saying, oh, you don't really want to tell people that. So how can we silence the inner critic? And, you know, we do that also through role models, and actually finding people that champion us. And, you know, that's such a key point of We Are Girls in Sport, because I know sport is just one part of what we're talking about with confidence, a really important bit, actually. But if you've got somebody who's quite shy, but they happen to be really good at running, if somebody champions you and just reminds them that, do you know what, you're bloody good at this, you know that, do you know that, do you recognize how much strength that gives you? And having somebody that champions you, whether it's somebody in the family, whether it's a family friend, or whether it is just a friend of yours in your class, when we lift each other up, that really helps to build our confidence. And do we do that enough? Do our friends do that enough to each other? We might do that more as adults. I think we get really a lot better, don't we, at women supporting women and lifting each other, but are our girls doing that enough?
So I think that's a really good point. And, you know, I'm not sure, I probably did it when I was younger. And maybe that's a nice takeaway for people today to think about with their daughters, you know, do they build up their friends? You also talk a lot about putting your hand up, and that's a common theme of things that you talk about. So what do you mean by that? Is that just putting your hand up in class, or?
Well, I feel really strongly that it starts from classroom. I remember when I was at school, and the reason why when I go in to talk to kids and I talk to them about being a C grade student that becomes an entrepreneur, that's a really important story, because, you know, the school said to me, Jo, we love it when we pay for athletes and Olympic athletes to come in and talk to our kids. But the reality of it is actually an Olympic athlete talking to a room of, you know, 500 students, the chances of those children becoming Olympic athletes is actually very slim. And, you know, I've got friends who are Olympic athletes, as you know, but when you set the bar that high, sometimes then the child feels that they can't reach it. So me going in and talking about my failures or how I managed to get somewhere, but actually I was not an A grade student. I was a C grade student who was in the bottom set of maths. And I put my hand up at 16 to take an opportunity and run this business with my brother, which has been an amazing journey for me. And it sort of started from putting my hand up. But when I was in my maths class, what was really interesting, and I'm sure lots of people will relate to this either from their own childhood or with their own girls. So when I was younger, we had 2 sets. Obviously, there's up to 8 sets now, but it was you're either in the lower set or the top set. I was in the lower, as I mentioned. And one of the teachers had a smart idea that maybe I should be moved up to the top set. And obviously that happened, and I was moved up to this other class, and everybody around me was answering questions and shooting their hand up in the air. And I could feel my confidence dropping because I thought, I'm so out of my comfort zone here. But one thing I did that I'm really proud of myself, and I'm proud of that 13 or 14-year-old girl, I put my hand up at the end of the class and I said, excuse me, miss, I don't think this is the right class for me. I don't think I should be here. And she's like, excuse me? I said, well, I don't belong in this class. I don't think it's right for me. And I'm so proud of myself for doing that, because if I hadn't, what would have happened, I would stay in that class and I would have felt like I was drowning. And so I got moved down to the bottom set, and I was much happier being top of the bottom than bottom of the top. And that's really important. And so when I now go into schools and I talk about putting my hand up, I wasn't putting my hand up to answer the question. I was putting my hand up to say something needed to change. And now when I went to college to do my A-levels, but things weren't very good at home, and I flunked some of my GCSEs because I was living with my aunt and my uncle because my parents got divorced, and it was quite a messy time. So then I felt a bit lost, as you do when you're 16, 17-year-old. I mean, it's very difficult, isn't it, at that age when people say, oh, what do you want to do? And a lot of 16, 17-year-olds don't know really what they want to do. And so I felt a little bit lost. And when my brother said, look, I'm going to start selling mobile phones, I think this is going to be a big thing. Bearing in mind, this is sort of the mid to late 1990s, I just put my hand up and said, I'm going to do it with you. Let's do it. And obviously my mum and dad thought I was a bit crazy, because you can't be going off trying to run a business at 16 years old. Obviously no one would lend us any money. I tried to see our bank manager to see if we could get an overdraft, and he wanted to know what security I had. And I reminded him that I didn't even have a car. And it's really difficult. There are lots of great ways now where young entrepreneurs are really starting to come through, and if they have a business idea, as we've seen, they can pitch for funding. We didn't have that sort of support. We went to my granddad in the end, and he lent us £2,000 so that we could start the business. So we'll always be grateful for him for believing in us. And we now turn over around 7 million. We employ about 30 people, and we've got 3 offices, and We are an Apple partner, and we look after clients like the Premier League and Iron Maiden and Crew Clothing and Saracens, and the list goes on, and Sail Sharks Rugby Club, but lots of rugby players, Caroline, obviously, if you can imagine. My job is very difficult, and I know you give me a lot of sympathy at times. And yeah, I'm really proud of that business, and it's amazing what you can start from nothing. And a lot of it starts from somebody believing in you, which is what we alluded to earlier, is when you have somebody that champions you, even at the time when it seems like a really ridiculous thing to do. Two people aged 16 and 20 trying to start a business from nothing, without any funding and you know, without a car, obviously. So
But
yeah.
I guess going back to your original point, a lot of it is about speaking up and having the guts, in a way, to take the plunge and do something different. And where do you think that inner confidence in you came from to do that? Now, you said that you were going through a tricky time. Was it that it was the best alternative, or was there something in you that was like, you know, what gave you the strength to do that?
Well, I think in many ways, as you say, you know, when you're younger, you sort of have, I didn't really have anything to lose. So putting my hand up meant that, you know, it didn't, I didn't really have anything else that was going to be a better option either. So my brother sort of offering me a bit of an olive branch and saying, let's do this together. I thought, yeah, you know, why not? And yes, there was quite a lot of doubters out there that probably thought I was a bit crazy, but I think my confidence got knocked a lot though. And trying to walk around with this briefcase, trying to sell mobile phones to anybody that would buy a phone from me, and getting a lot of rejections, people putting the phone down on you, people. And I always looked quite young, and maybe I'm blessed with a bit of a baby face, but when I was younger, I was so desperate to be older. And then you get older and you reminisce about being younger, and that's how this circle goes, doesn't it? But I was so desperate to be taken seriously, and it took me a long time before I felt that people really did. And yeah, you know, when you're self-taught and you become a leader, but you're a self-taught leader, you just learn so much along the way. But it is those hiccups you talk about. You know, we talk about how we build up the resilience and how we have that grit. And can we install grit and resilience in our children from a young age? I think we can. This isn't something that can be taught, but it's something that we can build in our children from a young age. But they have to go through experiences, and if they're always afraid to come out of their comfort zones, they're never going to be able to build it. And this is the problem, where not only are they putting their hand up, or whether they're going down and trying a sport for the first time and not being afraid of whether they're going to be any good at it. It doesn't matter if they're going to be any good at it. It's whether they enjoy it as well. Just try it. And so many sports, you know, offer free trials, and it's brilliant if girls don't feel like they have to follow what their friends are doing. I love it if a girl goes, do you know what, I'm going to go against it all. My friends all want to do this, but do you know what, I really fancy trying out rugby. I don't know why, just feel like I might want to give it a go. Because that's what happened.
So what can sport give girls? I mean, I know that you and I feel like we know it backwards, but I know there, you know, might be lots of people on here who think, well, what kind of role does sport have to play in building confidence?
I'll give you a really good example. I'm sorry, Caroline, because you've heard this before, but it is a really lovely story, and one that I feel that needs to be shared. So I know I just was talking a little bit about rugby there, and the reason why I was talking about that is because when my daughter was 5 years old, her godmum suggested that Erin might like to come and do a bit of rugby with her son. So it was a way of my friend spending more time with Erin. Whether Erin was going to enjoy it or not, she did. Again, went down, gave it a try, and you know what rugby is like. Come rain or shine, they're standing on the side of a pitch in your freezing cold with your coat on and your coffee. It's not always very glamorous, but you know what? She really enjoyed it, and within a few weeks, you know, when they're really tiny, she won like Tagger of the Week, and you know, you get those little confidence boosts. And all of a sudden, she started to really thrive with rugby. And she was actually playing for Sevenoaks at the time. And they had about they had a few girls, which was brilliant. You know, bringing girls through in sports like rugby is really important. And obviously the coach knew that I was a real ambassador of bringing our girls through in a sport like rugby. So it's great to watch. First, great that she was enjoying it, and great to see how she was going to progress. And by the time she was in under sevens, there was enough girls to sort of, you know, put together a bit of a squad. And what was really nice is the coach came up to me and he said, "Jo, I know you like all of this, you know, women in sport type stuff." I said, "Yes, Corey, yeah." He said, "Well, something's happened at the club, which is really good, and I wanted to talk to you about it before I spoke to anybody else, because I think that if I didn't mention it, you'd probably string me up." I was like, "Okay, well, what's happened then?" He said, "Well, for the first time in 100 years, we have enough girls in under sevens to put a team together. How do you feel if we took the team to the Kent festivals?" He said, "I'm asking you first. I haven't asked anybody else yet." And I said, "Corey, firstly, you're bloody brilliant, because you haven't let that go. You haven't let 100 years of history just disappear. You want to celebrate that we have enough girls to actually put a team together. Fantastic." So I was so pleased that, again, we talk about you know, role models, and Corey was a brilliant role model for Erin in her younger rugby years. So anyway, they put this squad together, and they hadn't really trained much together, because, as you know, when you play rugby, they mix up all the kids, don't they? So they didn't really know each other that well. So they went to the Kent Festival, and there was a lot of hype around the club, because first time in 100 years, and, you know, it made the newsletter, and this was big news. And they went to the Kent Festival that day, and they played 4 games. And we obviously had high hopes for our girls as we championed them. And bearing in mind, they had to play against boys because there aren't any other girls' teams. So the girls lined up arm in arm, which was a wonderful scene, as you can imagine, against the boys. And the boys were looking at these girls going, "What's going on?" And they played those 4 matches, and they came away and they lost 3, but they won the last one. So us being parents, you know, "You did so well, well done, you know, well done you." And Erin gets in the car and she's very quiet and she's not really buying it. But, you know, it's difficult to know what to say, isn't it? Because it hurts when you lose. And that's ultimately, whether you're 7 or 27, it doesn't make any difference. When you lose it, it hurts. So she was very quiet, subdued on the journey home. And the next morning she came down for breakfast. So she came downstairs, I was in the kitchen, and she quietly just said to me, "Mum, I think I've figured out why we didn't win." Okay, quite interesting for a 7-year-old. I said, "Okay, Erin, you tell me what you figured out. Why didn't you win?" She said, "Well, Mum, we didn't come together as a team. We didn't communicate very well. Molly and Cordelia, they're the best at tagging. Iris and I are quickest up the wing, but we didn't play like that. And that's why we didn't win, because we didn't play to our strengths." I had to hold back from crying, because obviously that's what we do, with emotional wrecks half the time. But I was so damn proud of her at 7 years old, and we're talking about strengths and confidence tonight. She knows at 7 years old that one of her biggest strengths is she's a sprinter. And when she gets hold of that ball, she's getting that try and she's going for the try line. And working out that that's not everybody's the same, and that girls have different strengths, was really, really important. And what was great is that they worked together as a team when they went back to Sevenoaks. And by focusing on their strength and their skills as individuals that come together as a team, well, they went back to the next Kent Festival, and I can tell you that they won 3 and lost 1. It was the complete reversal. And I came away feeling so damn proud. And she's still playing now, by the way. And I think this year is her last year playing with the boys, and then she'll be separated, which she's a bit disappointed about, because she likes playing with the boys as well, and they do all their fitness stuff, and it's great. And I'm so glad that she's carried it on, because she says, you know, when she plays rugby, she says, "Mum, when I play rugby, it makes me feel like me." And it's such a brilliant thing. And actually, it's not just, yeah, she plays cricket and football and does other things as well. But what's important is finding that thing that gives her passion. In this instance, it is sport, which is perfect for tonight. But it is the sport that fuels her, and that makes her feel really good about herself. So as a parent, I have to champion her and champion that so that she can carry on to feel that. And that's what's been so tough about lockdown, is trying to get kids to do any type of activity, even when they're really sporty. I don't know if everyone else has found this. I've got a daughter now that's walking around in a hoodie and she's turned into a teenager. This is not the Erin that I know, but what she loves is team sport, and it's team sport that's been taken away. When you know, if you've got kids that do sport and it's an individual sport, it might be a little bit different. But for Erin, if she's not with her team, that's she's found that really, really hard. So yeah, you can find so much strength through that.
So I'm just conscious of time and making sure that Polly and Joe got the floor too. So can we just talk about, I want to talk about two things. I want to talk about your new book that's coming out, or your first book, and also for people to take away now from you, what would be your 3 top tips?
Yeah.
For everybody loves the 3 top tips. So 3 top tips on building confidence in girls.
So my 3 top takeaways really for tonight. The first one is encouraging your daughter to write down her top 3 strengths, or 3 things that she really enjoys doing. I would love to know from you guys if she feels like she can write 3 down, because I say a lot of girls tend to get to 2, and it's finding that last one tends to be a struggle. So that would be really good. The second one is to really encourage her to silence the inner critic. So when she's just thinking about, I'm no good at this and I'm no good at that, you've got to turn that around, and you've really got to think about, you can do this. And there's so many, even when I was writing my book, that little inner voice, doesn't it, says, are you sure you want to be writing a book? What if people don't like it? What if people don't buy it? But if we think like that all the time, we'd never get anything done, would we? So silencing the inner critic is really important. And the third one is, obviously having a positive mindset is really important. And there's been so many times where my daughter has had knockbacks, but by staying positive and saying, that's okay, Mum, I'm really damn proud of myself and I'm going to do this again, or I'm going to try again. And having that positivity is something that we can really instill in our children. And if you haven't had a chance, I would strongly recommend you look up Dr. Carol Dweck, and her book on mindset is absolutely brilliant. She is on a TED Talk as well. But Caroline and I talk about this all the time, but where your forces go is where your energy goes. So just encouraging our girls to really think about the positives and what they can do, rather than thinking about what they can't do, is really important.
And
so
I guess also, sorry, just to quickly interrupt, also trying to role model that as parents. So trying to silence our own inner critics and trying to be positive ourselves, because then hopefully that will pass down to our children, that they also can think positively and maybe turn a bad situation into a good situation. I know it sounds a little bit the Waltons or Sound of Music, that it's all, beautiful and rosy, but, we do need to do that, and we do need to try and think like that for our children, I think.
Yeah, and we take the positives out of the negatives as well.
Yeah.
And then, yes, so thank you. Yes, my book, I handed in my manuscript yesterday, which was about 65,000 words, plus I've got about another 10,000 to complete. I'm really excited. It is all about raising confident girls. I can't say too much about it, but I should have a book cover this month, which is, it doesn't really seem real, but it will be out. Well, I'm hoping October 2021, and if I'm lucky, I'm really hoping it will be actually released on International Day of the Girl, which would be awesome. It's got global rights, so it will be sold all over the world. Yeah, I can't imagine. And even sometimes I go into Waterstones and Erin says, I'm looking for your book, Mummy. I'm like, it's not out yet, Erin. But I love that she's looking for it already. So yeah, it just goes to show that grit and resilience. I got there in the end.
Thank you, Jo. Right, handing over to the how people. So if you take yourselves off mute.
I think I've narrowly avoided a tech disaster. But can you, am I
disappearing to kick all your children off the internet?
So Jo from the how people has got 4 children, and she's a doctor.
Yeah.
And she homeschools normally for fun.
Am I on double microphone or not? No. I'm just going to shove my phone over here in case we have a meltdown.
Okay, so ladies, I'll let you talk about your take on confidence and the confidence coaching that you deliver to your membership.
Brilliant. Well, I think we've prepared a few little slides, just because sometimes it's actually quite nice to see what we're doing as we have a chat about it. So Polly will sort out screen sharing, but essentially, thank you so much for having us. Caroline, thank you for that lovely introduction. That's very sweet of you. I think we knew we were a match made in heaven as soon as we had that chat the first time. So it's been great to be, helping each other and supporting each other as we do. So thanks for having us. But I'm Jo, and this is Polly.
Sorry, can you enable me to screen share?
Oh no, that's not me. I can't do that.
It's all going so well.
It was all going so well. Yeah. So I'm Jo.
Okay, try now.
Yeah. You all right?
Hang on a minute. Yeah, all good.
Still get there in the end. So I'm Jo, and this is Polly, and we are co-founders of the How People, which, as Caroline mentioned, is a digital coaching membership platform for teenagers. And we are also on a mission to empower and inspire and support and connect teenage girls. So I guess you're all here for probably slightly different reasons. Maybe some of you have got teens. I think a lot of you probably work within the sports industry, or maybe you've got your own online platforms, or just interested in finding out a little bit more. But we've just put together a bit of information, a few of our thoughts, and then we can just have a chat afterwards. So
what we're going to cover tonight, we thought we'd give you a little overview quickly, is why we are doing what we're doing, what the How People are all about, and why we're the right people to be running the community, and then 3 takeaway actionable tips to grow your confidence.
So we'll start off with some of these facts Jo has already touched on, but I think it's always good to see these things in black and white to kind of just get hold of exactly what we're dealing with. I mean, we all know that anxiety has increased dramatically in all of our teenagers, and particularly girls. And low self-esteem is now being reported in 61% of secondary school girls. And really, self-esteem comes from the inside. And we believe that the key to growing your self-esteem and self-worth comes from our confidence and our ability to grow our confidence. People talk about, if you've got good self-esteem, then it must mean you're confident or you're overconfident, and they're not necessarily linked. They're not necessarily always. It's not always necessarily that straightforward. It doesn't mean you're conceited if you're confident or if you're full of self-confidence. But it's an interesting area that we think has got probably multifactorial. But these 3 things keep cropping up in the conversations that we've had, in the way that we think our teens are being affected by the society that we live in today. The internet, complete double-edged sword. We know over this pandemic, I mean, we've put on a bit of lippy. We are all in our slippers, but tonight is a big night. On Zoom is the new out, as we said when we arrived. But the internet, we know you can have meaningful, proper connections. Online learning, when it's done properly, can be absolutely fantastic. You can connect with people from all over the world that you wouldn't be able to meet in real life, but it has its major issues. I think we've all seen our teenagers regress into much more of an online world, which we all struggle with. And if they're not given some guidance, sometimes it can be very, very unhelpful. Obviously, online bullying, but just that endless social media feed in the real world, sort of the FOMO of not being invited into different groups or not being a part of something that's going on. The other day, my son said that when Boris did his announcement at 8 o'clock, his phone was upstairs, and he went upstairs to check his phone about an hour later. And we live in Wales. We've been in lockdown since the beginning of December, just before Christmas. So Boris's announcement didn't really affect us greatly. But when he picked up his phone, he had 1,000 messages on his WhatsApp feed. And it's just overwhelming, the amount. It was overwhelming for us as adults, but for them, it really is overwhelming. And obviously there's that beautiful people, perfect life and Instagram society that they're seeing. So I think we have to be really mindful of the place of the internet. Obviously huge benefits, but we have to be mindful of that. the education system, love it all over. School is a thing. I flexi school, I like to call it now. I had 4 kids in the education system. We then took them out to go traveling, and 2 of them never went back in because the 2 boys really flourished in a homeschooling, traveling education environment. So when we came home, we carried on, and we said we'd do it for a term and see how it went. And now my eldest has gone to secondary school, but my youngest is still homeschooled. So we see things from both sides, but there's no getting away from the fact that teachers are stressed. They're unable to teach as they would like to teach. And the focus of secondary school is, in general, the GCSEs. Now, I'm not casting every school with this brush, but essentially they're in there to come out with decent GCSEs, and that is the ballpark that everybody's looking for at the end of secondary school. And there's a lot that's missed along the way and concerns us, lack of life skills, lack of more holistic education. And then the changing world that we live in. The world can seem like a big scary place to us adults. Climate change, plastic pollution, not to mention a global pandemic. What we're living through at the moment, occasionally when you stop and you actually think what we're living through, it's quite mind-blowing. And none of us know how to deal with it, and young people are the same. So these things are chipping away at their self-esteem and potentially at their confidence. And how much of this is affecting the numbers that we're seeing at the moment, we're not gonna know. But it's not easy at the moment. As Caroline mentioned, we had a really great 3-week workshop that we were lucky enough to hold with the NatWest Bank. It was basically about entrepreneurship for the older girls. But what they highlighted again to us is that 85% of jobs that will exist in 2030 don't even exist yet. They haven't even been invented. Times are changing. The systems have got to catch up with it, and we've got to be teaching our kids to be more resilient, have better life skills, be creative and be adaptive to change. And the World Economic Forum have come up with this list of the top 10 skills for the future world of work. And I think it's really interesting looking at that, how much of that is covered within our schools, and how much of that, if it's lacking, what is that going to do to our children's confidence? So we have basically been looking at what we can do to help, because prevention is better than cure. So Polly, do you want to tell us a little bit about us, or you?
Well, I think the interesting thing about Jo and I is that we're really similar, but we're really different in lots of different ways. Our backgrounds are different, but we ended up, together creating this for reasons because we just love it, and it means a lot to us for different reasons. I never found my story interesting until I met Jo, and she always used to tell my story, and I was like, well, why is she finding it so interesting? It's like boring. But I found out when I was quite young, I was dyslexic. I was the youngest of 3 kids. I've got 2 older brothers, both very academic, both painfully intelligent. And I was always just classed myself as the thicko because I found all academic work really hard. Never had an issue with confidence, always the first to do everything, always trying to be faster than my brothers, always trying to be doing things better, apart from spelling, which I'm never going to win that. And I struggled in school. I ended up with 3 GCSEs, and they were in the really important subjects of PE, French and art. So I didn't really know what I was going to do from there. Luckily, I had really supportive parents, and they sent me to college to do design, where I met the most unlikely of role model. I still see her in my head as like Nora Batty. She was definitely probably only about 60, but in my head at the time, she was like proper old, wearing pleated skirts, and she just saw straight through me. And she saw the work I was doing, and she then said, oh, well, this is brilliant. And I was like, no, it's not. And she taught me the difference between confidence and self-confidence. And at the time, I was always told I was confident. I was told that I was good at doing stuff. I was happy to talk to a room full of people, and just happy to talk to new people and make new friends and stuff. But as soon as someone questioned something that I had done, my work or anything I designed, I was like, oh no, it's rubbish, it's rubbish. And she saw straight through the mask. And even I didn't know this at the time, and she taught me the difference. And it was a huge eye-opening moment. It was the first time I really remember being exposed to a role model. And it made a huge, huge difference in my life. Like, she persuaded me that I was good enough to go back and do Maths and English GCSE. So I'm now the proud owner of Maths and English GCSE. And I never thought, I was almost proud of the fact that I wasn't going to go to university. I was like, well, I don't need to go to, Henry and Guy are going to go to university. I don't need to. Because I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think I could do the dissertation that was required. I didn't think I was enough. And she taught me that I was. And actually, I went to university, I did a degree, which I never thought I would do. And I actually, through love of communication, love of people, I ended up working for a global sports company for 11 years, where I basically played with spreadsheets and chatted to people and helped create pathways for people to get stuff done, because I like people. And it turns out you don't need to be really, really good at school. It's great, and if you can do it, brilliant. But if I'd have had more confidence in school, if I hadn't have written myself off because I was dyslexic when I was in school, then I might have been quite different. So that's my story.
Can I just interject a minute?
Yeah.
I mean, how did that role model, that teacher, how did she make you believe in yourself? Because that's probably what a lot of the parents on here, like, was it that she listened? Was it that she praised you? Like, how did she make you feel good?
I think she put me on the spot, to be honest. I remember the moment. We were stood in the side of this design room, and she absolutely called me out when I still can't take a compliment. I'm still really rubbish at taking a compliment. But she noticed it at the time. And I think because everyone else that had known me growing up just knew that I could chat to anyone and do anything and was sporty, but a bit of a thicko, then that I actually, no one had ever really called me out on it before. So as soon as, and I wasn't the perfect setup for school, purely because I think our school wasn't really set up for knowing how to deal with someone with dyslexia then. So I was put into, like, not just bottom sets, but it was called special ed then. So I was with a mix of everyone else with lots of other disabilities. So I just didn't engage with school. They didn't understand that I knew that I was perfectly intelligent. I look back now and I'm thinking, I could have done all that stuff standing on my head. I just needed to have it explained in maybe a different way. Yeah. And I still remember that they gave me 20% more time for my exams. I was like, well, that's not going to help me. I don't know what I'm doing. But if I'd have had someone that had seen me at that age and seen that I struggled with self-confidence and that I just needed a different way of learning, then I absolutely wouldn't have left my 3 excellent GCSEs.
But
that
I think,
might
Polly,
be a good takeaway. Sorry, go on, Jo.
I was just going to say, I think if Polly was asked to do what Jo would ask that room full of other year 12 children to do, I think she would still find that really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I definitely was thinking that as you said it, I would definitely still find that uncomfortable. So I think that the reason that she had such an impact on me is because she called me out on it. And she said, I know you're confident. I'm not questioning you're confident. Because I almost went back a little bit aggressive. I was like, I am confident. Everyone tells me I'm confident. I'm fine. I can do this. And she was like, no, I'm not telling you you're not confident. I'm telling you don't have any self-confidence. And suddenly it was like a light went on. I was like, oh. And I was 16 at the time, so I thought I knew what I was doing in the world. And no one had ever done anything before me. But the reality of it is, it was a huge moment. And I realized that role models, and I dedicated my dissertation to her and all that. I don't know what she's doing now, but she had a huge impact on my life because she saw through the shell. She saw straight through this, like, yes, we know you're sporty. Yes, we know you talk to a room full of people, but she saw straight through me and called me out on it.
Great. I'll let you get back to your slides. Thank you.
So yeah, that was me. And then my story became interesting because Joey found it interesting. And
well, she always leaves a bit out as well of it. This story is that when she was in Leeds doing her degree, she worked in a surf shop as a part-time job, and the rep of one of these massive companies kept coming in and said, when you want a proper job, you give me a ring. And she said, I don't want a proper job. I've never want a proper job. I'm going traveling. And then when she came back from traveling, he found that she was back, and he rang her up and offered her a proper job. And that's why she went to work at the global firm that she then stayed at. So actually, it wasn't about GCSEs. And this is what we one of the things we try and tell the girls. It's about your communication skills. Obviously, your GCSEs are important, but it's about putting your hand up, asking the question, sending the email, being personable, being nice to everybody, you know, just going out of your way to help people will,
making,
you know,
some time. I always made time to chat to him when he came in, and I was interested in, I always found it interesting talking to people. Yeah.
So she always leaves that bit out.
I always tell the story wrong.
But yeah, mine's really boring, to be honest. From a medical family, didn't know any different, was never really on the path for medicine, very middle of the road, but really quite determined, and kind of, I was just one of those kids, I think, that if you gave me something to do, I'd do it and have a go. I don't think I ever really particularly struggled with my confidence, but I did come across big hurdles along the way. Like I wasn't ever capable of doing medicine. The reason I carried on is, well, I wasn't really academically in that echelon, even though it wasn't really that high when I did it. But my chemistry teacher told me I couldn't do it, which is why I then carried on to do it, because I was just determined to prove him wrong. So anyway, long story short, there was always other things that I wanted to do. I knew that actually I was going to have a varied career, and I got into business about 10 years ago, running my own business, 4 kids, a year traveling, back home in Mumbles, knew that I needed to focus on what I was really passionate about, and Polly and I came up with this together. We could talk about ourselves all night, but that's not what we're here for. So I think we'll crack on with
the end of that. You also have to add to the point that you are a GP with 4 kids and school and run a business and another business.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all good.
So that's us. So it all started, what we do and why we find it also important is we did a pilot for something called How Girls last, oh God, it's not even last summer now, summer before. So we had 16 girls in a beach cafe on a Thursday night, 6 weeks, and then a residential at the end of it. We've always known that the thing that is missing in a lot of teens and preteens is confidence. So we tried to base the whole course really around how to build confidence and resilience and friendships and a community. So we did something different every week. We did scrapbooking at the end of every session, but we did talked about the environment a lot. We did some yoga. We had a different role model come into the session every week, because learning comes from experience and confidence comes through being comfortable with those new experiences. Actually, we took them surfing for the first time, and there is the surf coach on the call somewhere, Gwenny, wherever you are. And she is an incredible role model. I never say these nice things to her face, but she was ex-British champion surfer, and she's about the mental age of the girls as well. So watching them together is so funny. And out of that, we've carried on with something called House Surf, because Gwen got addicted to the girls and the girls got addicted to Gwen, and then they all got addicted to surfing. So we got a lot of girls around here into surfing because of connecting them to an excellent role model that we happen to have locally. And then we've gone on quite a journey since then, and it's all been built around how to bring out confidence in teenage girls, how to help engaging them in sport, how to help engage them in new activities and new things that they might not have experienced, by giving the confidence to do it as a community, as a group of girls, and to make sure that they are building each other up and they're each other's champions. So we've done so much. We've tried to cover different topics. We did British Sign Language. We've tried to cover Black Lives Matter. We've done loads of different workshops. We've done a buy one, give one. We've got a beach cleaning board at the local beach now. We've done period week. We started with a talks night. So we had it was 60 girls in the village, and it was 4 role models, and they were against the big TV clock for 10 minutes, and they had a countdown. They knew how long they had to tell these girls who they were, what they did, why they were passionate about what they did, and they were from all different walks of life. And it was such a success, and the girls loved it, and the room was on fire. It was amazing. that we booked 3 different places. We did Bath, Cardiff and Bristol. We had booked for April, and then obviously had to cancel everything, which actually just made us pivot slightly. We then took everything online. So we've been doing what we now call How Inspire, which is getting these role models from everything we can think of to come and talk to the girls on Zoom, to have this access to these different people doing absolutely amazing things. So this is a list of just a few of them. We've had comedians, I'm not going to read them all out, don't worry. Actually, the idea that you might not be into something, so you wouldn't normally go for it. One of the most successful ones we had was a soil scientist, and I didn't even really know that that was a thing before we spoke to her. And she's so engaging and so brilliant and so passionate about what she does that suddenly it makes you think differently about, you know, a different pathway, and knowing that there's that person you can talk to if you wanted to find that connection. Entomologist, I did have to Google what that was, to be fair. We've had adventurers, we've had journalists, we've had news presenters, we've had so many different things. And the key message from nearly all of them, and we always ask the same question at the end, which is, if you had any advice to your teenage self, what would it be? And honestly, the feedback is nearly always, have confidence in yourself. Don't tell yourself you can't do something. Always go and set yourself a goal and try and make that goal. Try and work there with your friends and build each other to get to your goals and targets. So doing this has been really eye-opening and just amazing to listen to these people with such passion, whether they're outdoorsy or not. It's all built around confidence. So we then realized that confidence is actually a superpower.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And it basically comes back to the 3 tips that you were talking about, Caroline. You know, confidence, we've talked about at length with several of our coaches that come to our membership calls. And, you know, we've got a couple of go-to books that I can put a link to. Obviously, Joe's book, I'm sure, is going to be absolutely brilliant. But we all need to work on our confidence. So if you go to the next slide, Paul. I think that, yeah. So confidence is the key. How do we get it? So the next slide as well. And this was just, I wasn't sure whether there were going to be girls or parents on this call, but it's just a reminder that feeling confident is a choice. You can feel confident about going into a situation. And we like to talk to the girls about confidence being like a muscle. And you have to exercise and use that muscle like you would any other muscle. So we talk about confidence being situational, because there'll be girls on the call who are, you know, confident to run out on the hockey pitch or stand up and play the violin, but, you know, putting their hand up in class, or, you know, doing something like going to ask for something at the shop might be something that cripples them and they can't do it. So what is it? What's the situation in which you feel confident? And looking at it as something you need to practice. So we've gone with our 3 top tips of how to build your confidence. So these are 3 things that you can do with your girls, you can talk about with your girls. The first one, the power pose, is basically pointing out to them that body language is about 80% of our communication. And I was talking to our kids about it today, and I was saying one sentence in all sorts of different ways and showing how actually the way you go into a situation can really affect how you feel about it. So the example that we use sometimes with our coaching calls is, if you're feeling unconfident about a situation, think back to a time that you felt confident and courageous, or that you overcame something. Think about that time and how that made you feel physically and emotionally, how that situation made you feel, and then try and transfer it to the situation that you're going into. And your body language will change, your shoulders will broaden, you'll stand up straight, you'll smile, and then you take your 3 deep breaths. So we try and have a bit of fun with that, and we call it a power pose, and we have a like Wonder Woman pose or a Superwoman pose or whatever it is. And we just have fun to sort of explain to them that you can introduce that into your normal day. The second one is stepping stones, which is basically breaking down any big goal needs to be broken down. And I think the slide that we've got, the second slide, shows these, do you want to move it on, Paul? Shows these stepping stones across. Oh, yeah. I'm not sure that's even playing. Is it?
Playing for anyone?
Well, I stand when I do my breathing. I stand at the top of the hill with my hands on my hips.
Yeah, that's my Wonder Woman, right? So the stepping stones on the next one. So just an illustration to say that if you were trying, this is a local river near us, if you were trying to get from one side of the river to the other in one big jump, you're not going to make it. But if you break it down into little stages, so, you know, you want to play a particular piece and you're just not mastering it, then you break it down into little steps and then suddenly it seems achievable. So breaking down your goals, making those goals big enough to be able to achieve, look back, think about what you've done, feel confident about making the next step. And then the third one is something we've picked up along the way from lots of people that we've spoken to, which is about your news feed. Now, we've both had experience with this. I found on my daughter, when she first went to secondary school, I couldn't understand why her news feed had gone from pictures of surfers and skiers and the outdoors, which is what she was loving and following. Suddenly, every single picture was makeup, heavily made up, sort of slightly seductive and provocative pictures of makeup. And I just couldn't understand. And I went through her phone and I found that she was following hashtag makeup. And at the time, I didn't know what hashtag was really. But actually, obviously, she'd put that in because she was looking for something online and she'd followed it. And actually then everything that was on her feed and every advert, you know, every subliminal messaging that was coming into her newsfeed was all about makeup. We took that off and her newsfeed went back to normal again. So be in control, turn off your phones at night, leave your phones downstairs. If they're following people that aren't making them happy, then they need to unfollow them. So occasionally sit down and have a bit of a sort out with your teen about what they're seeing and what they're not seeing and go through it with them, and encourage them to unfollow any unhelpful accounts.
Yeah, the other thing that we've learned from being in control of your scroll, it's being in control of your phone as well. The big thing that's made a difference for me is that I've turned off my social media notifications altogether. And actually, there's one of the girls that came to speak to us, speak to our girls a few months ago, said that you should be in control of when you decide to look at your phone and not when your phone wants you to look at it. And I never really thought about it like that until my phone buzzed in my pocket when I was out for a walk with the kids. And Rory just said to me, "Mummy, why are you on your phone?" I was like, "I don't know, it just buzzed." So I looked at it and I was like, right, that's it. These notifications are going off. I hadn't even thought about it until it buzzed. And I've always got my phone on silent anyway. So it's literally that little thing that can make a huge difference.
I think
and now, if I want to look at any of my social medias or our How account or anything, then I will do it when I decide to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it could apply to adults as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it, you know, those are three things that we can change really easily. And I think the effect of that scroll, that constant comparison, you know, chips away at our self-esteem and confidence. So we're nearly finished. This is just a little quick, easy five C's of what we actually do in our membership. As Caroline mentioned, it's a digital membership of girls between 11 and 16. We have weekly Zoom calls with guests, with coaches, with mentors. It varies. We try and cover lots of different subjects, but essentially we are encouraging coaching, which is it's life coaching and personal coaching, I guess, which comes back to something that Jo mentioned at the beginning, is that I think as British humans, we haven't actually had much opportunity to give ourselves positive feedback. It's not something that was ingrained in us when we were growing up. And I think if we can start young with these kids before they get into their teenage, proper teens, to get into good habits of actually reflecting on what they've done or being kind to themselves, then that habit will just stick with them in later life. So coaching, collaboration, we work with all sorts of different people and we've had some amazing amazing collaborations, including this evening. We've got a great community of mentors and girls. It's all about confidence building, and it's about connection. We want to be able to put these girls in touch with each other, and we want to be able to, you know, one of them said to us, can you find us an actress, because I want to talk to an actress who's in the West End. We'll go out there and find an actress in the West End and bring them to chat to either her on a one-to-one basis or on Zoom. So that's what we're all about. And I think the next slide is how to find us at the How People. And we are on all social media, and our membership opens at the end of January. But I just cobbled together today, for anyone that's on this call, we're doing a vision boarding workshop tomorrow that we're going to record and make into a mini course, because vision boarding is a really powerful thing to do with your daughters or with your sons, or, you know, as a family.
Brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just brilliant. And we've actually did a sort of reflective version as well, and I think that's quite good. We didn't mention that, but actually, if you've got somebody that's struggling with confidence, look back. What have they done? What have they overcome? What were amazing experiences they've had? So they've got something that when they come along and find something hard, they look at it and think, hang on, that's nothing. I did this, you know. So we're doing vision boarding tomorrow with them. We're going to make it into a mini course. If you find us on the website, click on the link and use that code, you'll get it for free.
Oh,
so that's available to any of your people on the call. And yeah, just keep in touch and get your girls to follow us. Hopefully there'll be some subliminal positive messages coming through to them. And yeah, we'd love to keep in touch with anyone who wants to get in touch with us.
Thank you so much, Joe and Polly. I was about to call you Poe and Jolly then, sorry. Got to really think
That's
about
fine.
your name, Joe and Polly.
We'll answer to that.
So appreciate that we're slightly running over, and I'm hoping that there are some questions. We've had some that have been sent in before the call because they want to remain anonymous. So if we can just be mindful of answer time, Joe, Polly, that would be really helpful. So this one is, my 11.5-year-old daughter is an elite ballet athlete or ballerina at the Royal Ballet School. They are brilliant at looking after their well-being, but my daughter is young for her age and compared to most of the other girls new to dancing at only 2.5 years of continuous dance lessons. Her dance teacher has identified that she needs to project more, be more confident in showing her personality. She's quite timid by nature, wondering what advice you might have for me to support a girl that is not given to shouting about herself, to come out of her shell and begin to sell herself. So Joe Wimble-Groves, if I could go to you first.
So is it her teacher that's saying she needs to?
No, it's her daughter.
Sorry,
sorry, her teacher is saying yes, she needs to
project a bit more. Well, if the teacher is acting more like a role model for her, is she sort of, maybe the teacher could explain what the expectation is of how she could do that? Because I don't know what your view is, Polly and Joe, but you know, fine for her to say, you need to do this, but in the same way that the teacher was able to guide Polly, can this teacher actually help this girl to say, this is what I would like to see from you, and these are some ways that you can do it? And then you almost sort of not challenge her, but challenge her to say, right, this is when you come back over the next 3 weeks, I'd love you to try and do X, Y, and Z, and I think it will really help you to build your confidence.
And I guess it goes back to the stepping stones as well, Joe, that you were talking about, whereby maybe you don't try and do it all in one fell swoop.
Yeah, but she's also dealing with girls a lot older than her, isn't she? Comparatively, she's dancing that much older. She's almost got a little bit of sort of imposter syndrome and insecurity, really, that she's not as good as they are, probably because they're more confident with their standard of dancing, I would imagine. They've probably got that, because their confidence does change between, you know, that sort of 11, 12 to 14, 15. It does alter. So I think something like a reflective vision board for her would be perfect, because obviously she's done some amazing things to get where she is. And I think maybe it's really good in January to say, look, I have this crazy idea of doing this vision boarding with these crazy people that I saw last night. And they suggested that we looked at what we've done well and look at what we're going to do ahead and focus on what she is enjoying and what she loves, because actually being in a competitive environment like that, I guess there's a lot of expectation on you. So she's got to continue to enjoy it, hasn't she? So maybe doing something like that at this point, saying, right, this is how far you've come. You're amazing. Focusing on all her strengths, even though she may be shy, focusing on all her strengths. This is where you've come. This is where you've come to now. Let's look ahead and break it down into little steps. And I think just make sure she's still enjoying it, I think, more than anything.
Yeah,
Okay, I think that's a good point. Sorry, Polly.
It's all about enjoyment. I totally agree. I think she's got to, it seems like there would be a lot of pressure in that environment. So it's focusing on enjoying and a sport that she obviously loves, that she's obviously very good at, and maybe extending the net of role models, seeing if there are, you know, Instagram is great for that sort of thing. Send someone a direct message and go, my daughter is struggling with, or would you mind having a chat with her? Because do you know what? People are desperate to help other people, and especially if it is a young, thriving athlete who is wanting to get better at the game or is struggling with confidence, people are ready to help, even if it's just a message from someone that's, I don't know, performed in some ballet that she admires. Obviously, I don't know much about ballet, but knowing that there are people out there that will definitely be able to give her some words of wisdom, people that have been there before.
Okay, so thank you, ladies. The next question is, I have two daughters, age 14, 11 and 11, sorry. The eldest is very fun, outgoing and confident, and the youngest is quieter, and she's written in brackets, calmer and more shy. Do you have any advice about how to encourage confidence within this dynamic? So maybe it's quite an overpowering older sibling. I'm not, that's what I'm guessing by the way she says dynamic, but I mean, I don't know for sure.
I have a similar dynamic, and it's really hard, especially as a parent, if you're one or the other. You know, we had a situation just earlier when my daughter was uncomfortable going on a Zoom call on video, whereas my son would have no problem doing that, and I'm kind of like, well, you know, you just put it on, it's absolutely fine, because I wouldn't worry about it, whereas my husband would, and he wouldn't like that at all. So I'm, you know, you tend to be polarized a bit, don't you? But I think you've just got to keep going with this supportive messaging for the little things, everything good, everything, you know. Being shyer by nature doesn't mean that she isn't going to be confident in certain aspects. It's just bigging up everything that she does, that actually when you have a louder sibling, often that just gets overlooked, because the noisy voice, it's a bit like the voice in your head, the noisy voice that has one or two things to say is the one that you hear, rather than the quieter voice with a lot to say. So I think just make time, focus on the strengths.
Or like maybe as an activity or something for them to do together, to do like reciprocal personality boards. So, you know, the louder one makes the board about the quieter one, and actually then the quieter one gets to see what the louder one thinks about them. So like a positive board that you do separately, but it's a really nice activity for them to sit down together and do.
You're also maybe to do what Jo would suggest about the three things that the 11-year-old is really good at, and vice versa. Sorry, Jo.
Try and take 10 things or cut them out of magazines, and like you say, make almost like a scrap page for each other. And you know, I've got the same situation where my daughter is quite confident, will happily go on a Zoom and things like that, but it's my son that's really noisy. But if I asked him to go on a Zoom, he'd just go into his shell. It's quite funny, and he's you know, he's quite loud, but equally lacks confidence in lots of ways. They're so interesting, aren't they, these individuals? But there's nothing wrong, as you mentioned, there's nothing wrong with being quiet. But again, it is about, like Polly said, pulling out their strengths and keep reminding them of their strengths. But there's nothing wrong with being quiet. It's just that inner confidence is in there. We just got to get it out.
Yeah,
totally agree. So thank you for that, ladies. Just wondering if anybody who is attending would like to ask a question, feel free to message it to me or give me a little hand wave and I can come to you. Or, you know, you now know about Jo and Polly and Jo, you can always get in touch with them separately. Or it looks like somebody might have one. I'm not sure. While I wait to see if that question comes through, let me just tell you a little bit about what's happening next week. So next week, we've got a chat about periods, which I know is a huge topic. we've got an amazing lady called Dr. Emma Ross coming to speak to us, who has worked with Olympians to work out how their cycle impacts their performance. Before we get really involved in the kind of sport element of it, Emma's going to go back to basics a little bit and remind people that are attending, like, you know, what periods are, which I know is ridiculous because a lot of us are parents on here, but how it actually works and what's happening to our daughters, or, you know, the girls' bodies as they're going through that phase. So talking about the hormones, talking about why girls maybe don't want to participate in sport, as in, it's not just the fact that they've actually got their period and maybe they feel uncomfortable, but what's happening mentally. So, and then she's also going to talk about how it impacts sports performance. And then, so that's happening next week, and you can get tickets in the same place. So have a look at our link in bio on Instagram, have a look on our website, there are links there. It's all in Eventbrite where you've got these tickets. I don't think we have got a question. Oh, here we go. How do you get your tweenage daughter to even start to want to engage with her parents, trying to help her with her confidence? Is one of the questions that's just come in. Who wants to take that one? I'm going to give it to Jo Watkins to start with.
Yeah, that is a difficult one. I think for me, it's looking outside to other role models. I think it's really important for them to have people in their lives that aren't parents who will bring out the best in them. And actually, for me, Gwen, who's on the call, has been a huge part of my daughter's journey from being an unconfident teenager through to having more confidence. And it's just bringing those people into their realm, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on YouTube. Find out what she's interested in. Keep the lines of communication open. It's so hard when you're not getting anything back. You know, talk to the school if necessary, and try and, you know, there's some books. I know Jo's written a book, but this book, which is actually meant for much younger children, has got some really nice exercises in there. And when we've sat down and done something together, it's actually been really, really helpful. So looking at what you're good at, looking at your strengths, sitting down, doing a vision board together, finding out a little bit more about what makes her tick. And I think we have to, as parents, lean in sometimes to things like making a TikTok or engaging in a game that I can't stand on, you know, whatever. Like sometimes you've just got to say, do you know what, let's see what that's all about. Let's do that together. And that moment, actually, then that half an hour that you spend doing that will mean an awful lot to them, and you'll be on a little bit more of an even wavelength. But it's a difficult time.
And I would just say that that's one of the reasons that we think, Jo and I think, sport is so important, because it gives you another community that as a teenager or a tweenager, you've got other people that you can look to, maybe speak to. And, you know, for us, that comes from sport, but it really could come from any hobby. If you're part of a community and you've just got other people that can act as role models and can influence some of your decision making and the way that you think.
Yeah.
Not to be underestimated what it must be like to be a teenager or a teenager in the middle of a pandemic, when you can't actually just go and vent with your mates and build that confidence and make those mistakes and learn from mistakes. And, you know, you are kind of a little bit stuck to what you can do and where you can go. And, you know, I know different people.
And it's all
Sorry,
all the communication is all the communication is all altered as well. You know, they're reading into messages or not messages, or somebody hasn't replied in 2 seconds or 5 minutes, or, you know, it's all second guessing all of this stuff rather than looking somebody in the face. So yeah,
nobody can tell the tone of a text message, I find.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, we struggle with that as adults, so I don't know how, you know, younger people. You
need to get a text message from my mum, capital letters, shouting in every single message. I'm like, all right, like, don't shout.
I don't know, when your mum texts me, she uses shorthand.
Okay, so it doesn't look like we've got any more questions coming in. So I've talked about what's happening next Wednesday, which is the period chat and sports performance, which I think is going to be fantastic. I know it's going to be fantastic. All I've got left to say then is thank you very much for coming to the biggest night in We Are Girls in Sport history. You were here. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for coming. Make sure you give us a follow, because then you'll receive our blogs, which are all about sport and sportswomen and how sport can help you. And we've got some really interesting blogs on there. And also, this was a free event tonight. I'm actually doing Red January, which has been running for a long time, and it's whereby you have to do some form of exercise every single day throughout January. So if you'd like to make a small donation, I will add it to the email that comes out tomorrow or the next day, depending on how homeschooling is going, just to get your feedback on tonight. And yeah, any donation would be welcome. It supports a charity called Sport in Mind, which is looking at how sport benefits mental health, which is something that Joe and I are very passionate about. So thank you very much indeed. Make sure you sign up for some more of our Wellness Month events. And yeah, look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks for being a wonderful host.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Joe.
thank you.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Yeah, thanks Joe and Polly, especially.
Oh no, thank you guys. Thank you.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.